Split Decision Podcast, episode number 121, here with my always brilliant and beautiful co-host, the Fight Geek. Fight Geek, how you doing today, bro?
Doing pretty good, man. Happy to be back talking fights with you. How you doing?
Doing very well. Okay, so folks, quick rundown on what we've got on tap tonight. First, we're going to do my opening question for Fight Geek. After that, we're going to jump into a recap and review of UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Dalkis. After that, we're moving on to the 2021 Splitties. The Splitties are awards, of course, our award show. And then after that, moving on to my favorite section of all, listener questions and more. But Fight Geek, I need to start off the show with a question about a fight that we've got to get to. Jake Paul knocking out Tyron Woodley, sleeping him like an absolute... I mean, he looked like a professional boxer. Woodley fell down like a tree. It was like timber. He couldn't have been more unconscious as he fell to the ground. And my question for you is, Daniel Cormier said, this is a bad look for MMA, whether we want to admit it or not. And my question to you is simple. Now that Jake Paul's going back and forth with Jorge Masvidal on Twitter, it really seems like this is getting a little out of control in terms of making MMA look bad. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I hate to agree, but I think it really can't look any other way than when, a five-time champion, even though, those of us in the know understand that, Woodley's on the backside of his career. He's 39 years old. And those of us who follow the sport really understand where he is relative to when he was elite. But I'm not sure that, 80% of the people who are tuning into these Jake Paul fights understand that. So in that regard, I do think it's detrimental, because what it does is it lessens the public view of a UFC champion and how skilled they are. And I think that is detrimental.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you. I think that there's a little bit of an urge among the MMA community to just kind of not admit to this, which I completely understand, because I didn't want to for a while.
I mean, like I said, for those of us in the know, this doesn't make Woodley, all of a sudden not a top five, welterweight of all time. We still understand it, the time and the place when he was great. But what it does is it just elevates a guy like Jake Paul, and he really shouldn't be elevated that way. What he's defeating isn't a five-time defending or UFC champion. He's beating a 39-year-old fighter who's probably two weight classes shorter than him, that's only participated in the sport twice.
Okay, but hold on, Fight Geek. I see what you're trying to do. You're trying to kind of limit the accomplishment here, but this was not the same as the first fight. Paul slept him on his feet in the most brutal way
but the
that
fight was terrible leading up to that.
Well, sure, but I mean,
it's not like it was some action-packed fight where he showed a lot of skill. Essentially, he had a 170-pound fighter in the sixth round, fatigued, and he landed a big power shot. When you got 30 pounds on someone and you have them fatigued, that's exactly what you should do with them.
Okay,
to be perfectly honest.
I agree. So let's get right to the point here. What is next for Jake Paul? Should Dana White be considering, for example, considering letting Jorge Masvidal box him, which Jorge and Jake Paul have been going back and forth on Twitter about, just to kind of shut up Jake? But then there's that concern. What if Jake beats Masvidal, right? Then things get even more out of control.
You go that route. Honestly, I think the fight to make is Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva is going to be a lot closer to his size. I think Anderson Silva probably walks around at about 195, so they're probably dead even size-wise. Anderson Silva is a former MMA guy with the same type of profile as Woodley, a champion who has a fringe, A-list name. But that guy can box. And if Jake Paul finds a way to beat Anderson Silva, then there's a whole new conversation. But
I totally agree with you that that's the fight.
Yeah, I mean, Tommy Fury will still do if you can't get Anderson Silva, but I think Anderson Silva at this point, a guy who is near and dear to my heart, he's one of my top 3 to 5 favorite fighters of all time, and he's the kind of older guy who could come in there and really give Jake problems and be too slick for him and be too skilled for him and have the size and cardio to be, pushing him back in the sixth round rather than letting him walk forward and basically feint any way he wants, draw you out and just land some big, clumsy power shot. I don't think that's happening to Anderson Silva.
Right. But Fight Geek, let me ask you, I completely agree that Anderson Silva would be the ideal next opponent. personally, I think that would absolutely be where the Jake Paul hype train gets derailed. No question.
Absolutely.
I am betting.
Absolutely.
I'm confident Silva sweeps
And to be fair to Jake Paul, the guy's been training for a few years now. He's a big, strong kid. I think you got to give him a little bit of credit.
Absolutely.
He did land that shot.
We have
to.
We have no choice.
For 6 rounds, so at this point, the guy has some skills. They're crude, and he's young in his career, but we have to acknowledge that, too.
He can box. Absolutely, he can. He's far more talented.
No, he cannot box.
Well,
let's not say that. He cannot box.
If cannot
put
box?
him in there with a true boxer, he would get mopped.
Okay, so wait. You just said put him in with a true boxer, he'd get destroyed. So Tommy Fury is an undefeated true boxer who literally would rather die. Tommy would rather die than fight him. I mean, can we agree on that? Tommy would rather die than fight him. He couldn't get out of that fight fast enough. He had zero intention.
I'm not sure about all that. I've seen the video.
Tommy had no intention of fighting him. Come on, Fight Geek, come on.
No, I don't believe he's afraid of him. I think it's a bad
I don't think he's afraid of him. I think he's
terrified
of losing to him. Not afraid of him, but afraid of the consequences of losing.
Well, the consequences of losing are bad, but it also kind of hurts to see Woodley rolling with the punches as well as he is with that loss because, I mean, for such a brutal loss, he's taking it pretty well. Have you paid attention?
Yes, I have. He's saying he's going to box 4 more times in 2022. You know me. I'm a diehard Woodley fan.
And then he just awarded somebody $5,000 for who made the best meme of him getting knocked out. It's just kind of like the joke is just all on Woodley, and that kind of sucks to see as someone who revered him at one point.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like one of the only Woodley fans left, and it's been very, very painful to say the least.
It doesn't change who he was in the UFC, but it definitely is probably going to be the first talking point whenever his name comes up.
And it's so unfortunate too, because that's so unfortunate. It's like what happened to BJ Penn.
It was no.
BJ Penn was a GOAT, and then now he's not a GOAT. Right, but
that would be like if BJ Penn got knocked out by Justin Bieber in a celebrity boxing.
Well, he did get knocked out by like a random fat guy at a bar.
But he didn't get knocked out by Justin Bieber in front of 10 million people.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Okay, that's true. But let me put it this way: if Tyron Woodley and BJ Penn are going to have a boxing match, I'd put $100,000 on Woodley, no problem.
I put it on BJ Penn, honestly.
What?
Woodley doesn't like to throw punches anymore.
Well, that's true. He kind of was the frozen one. Okay, so final question for you here. If you are Dana White, what do? You do anything? Do you try to?
No. If I'm Dana White, I keep doing what I'm doing, lining my pockets full of money with the UFC Apex shows, and doing. Dana White is always the winner.
But does he need to stop the bleeding? Yet? Does he need to stop the bleeding of the UFC's image with Jake Paul, this YouTuber, knocking out all his guys?
No, because I think Dana's comfortable knowing that the guys that Jake Paul is getting are guys that Dana had decided already he was done with. So Dana had already decided that Askren and Woodley were past their expiration date. So I'm sure it doesn't hurt him at all. I'm sure he doesn't like to see, his older guys having these cash grab fights, but he saw Liddell and Tito do it. Like he's not new to this. He's seen this for a long time. So yeah. I don't think he's feeling like he needs to protect the UFC's reputation.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, we better move on. Our listeners are getting so annoyed. I can feel the eye rolls. Guys.
Well, if it had ended any other way other than that, I don't think you talk about it as much, but that was truly a jaw-dropping moment.
Absolutely agree. Okay, so let's move on to our recap and review of UFC Fight Night, Lewis versus Dalkis. To me, there were a few fights that, to talk about, especially let's just start with the co-main. We'll go to the main, but the co-main.
Okay.
Bilal Muhammad absolutely dominated Stephen Wonderboy Thompson for a devastatingly lopsided unanimous decision. And my question simply is, what is Bilal Muhammad's ceiling at welterweight? Am I a hater for saying that I don't think it's much higher at all?
I think he's about at his ceiling, to be honest with you. I mean,
I agree.
That's not a shot at him, but I still don't see him as a title contender. But again, who knows? He's still young enough to maybe he'll age into a title shot with a favorable matchup. So I guess you have to say his ceiling's a title contender.
You think he could? You think he could age into a title shot when there's people like?
Well, what I'm saying is Usman, if he's out of here in a year or so, and then Masvidal's aging and doesn't do well with wrestlers.
Colby, Chimaev.
Colby rarely fights.
Burns. He's not beating Burns. He's not beating Burns.
I could see him potentially pushing Burns, especially because it seems that he has an endless gas tank, and I think Burns obviously is an oversized 155er. You could put him into uncomfortable situations late in fights. So, yeah, I think that's a favorable matchup for Bilal.
You think Burns is a true 155er? We completely disagree on that.
Well, he's a small 170 guy. He's muscular, but he's short with short limbs.
True.
He's not like a big 170.
Well, okay, true. I mean, I've just, in terms of power, I don't see how, I have trouble seeing how
Bilal... Well, maybe
he's
a power. Well, what do you mean in terms of power? Bilal looked like an absolute powerhouse this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, again, is Wonderboy known as Mr. Power
Fighter? Well, no, and that's why I was surprised that Wonderboy got re-signed, because I'm not sure what you can... I mean, was a terrible matchup for him. I picked him because I thought he'd keep the range, but I didn't realize it was in the small cage. Bilal was able to stick to him pretty easily, and Wonderboy wasn't able to move as much as he normally would. So, bad matchup for Wonderboy, but there's not a lot of good ones anymore for him at that stage. So, it's interesting to wonder how they're going to match him up 5 more times, because if you keep putting him against top 5 guys, it's not going to go well anymore, I don't think.
No, I completely agree. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but obviously they don't have an obligation to give him 5 more fights just because.
Well, they just re-signed him to 6-fight deal.
Right.
They got to offer him at least a fight every 4 months or something.
But I'm pretty sure they can cut someone whenever they want, whenever they deem fit.
That obviously they've done that in the past, so probably. I just thought it was a strange signing, not something Dana usually does, but. I mean, Wonderboy still has some interesting matchups, so he can turn into that uber gatekeeper at 170.
Okay, so last question about this fight, and then we'll move on. So Bilal Muhammad moved up a whopping 5 spots, all the way to the number 5 contender. Here's the fighters in front of him. 4 Vicente Luque, 3 Leon Edwards, 2 Gilbert Burns, 1 Colby Covington, and then, of course, Usman. Do you see him beating any of those 5 in front of him? I do not.
I would not favor him, no, in any of those. But I think he's live in a couple of those matchups. I do think you're selling him a bit short. He's showing the cardio, the physicality, the pace. He comes from a great gym. I mean, yeah, he's got some things going for him.
No, I could see him, and I think the best matchup there would be maybe Leon Edwards.
Leon Edwards might be a matchup he can get to the ground. Colby Covington's an interesting matchup because Colby doesn't possess a lot of power in his hands. So would he be able – whose wrestling would neutralize who there would be an interesting matchup for me.
True. Oh, you know what? Actually, the more I think about it, Muhammad versus Covington's a pretty damn good fight, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think it's a great fight. And I would favor Colby, but Colby's had a lot more damage than he has over the last few years. And yeah, I think that there'd be an interesting wrestling question there.
Okay.
Because Colby's not going to back you off with his punches generally.
Yeah. So last question. I know I said this was the last, but final last question on this. Bilal said that if he could fight anyone, he would fight Khamzat Chimaev. He believes that getting a win over him is better than a win over anyone else, except for Usman, of course, and it would get him the title shot. You know, does that make a little bit of sense? I think that could potentially work.
Absolutely. I'll take that right now.
Chimaev is 11. Bilal's 5. I mean...
Chimaev, we still need to see him tested. Obviously, the Leech was a step up, but that's not an elite competitor. I think Bilal's form against Wonderboy put him in the top 5. Like, that was a performance where there was a level between him and Wonderboy in what they were trying to do in there. And that was impressive.
Yeah, I mean... You know, I mean, even I've had my little personal run-ins with Bilal, and even I have to admit he looked amazing. I mean, I can't...
Best he's ever looked.
Best he's ever looked. Absolutely the best he's ever looked. I totally agree. I don't even think it's up for debate.
With that kind of trajectory, I think he makes a couple of interesting fights for sure. And I think that'd be the toughest test for Chimaev to this point, no doubt.
Definitely. I say that's the fight. In fact, I'd say make that fight. But what do I know?
Well, you were just talking about not having any fights for Bilal, and now you like Covington and Chimaev.
Good point. I think I just had to work it out. I had to work it out with you.
But yeah, I think it's interesting. Bilal's done well for himself.
He absolutely has. Okay, so moving on to that main event. Derrick Lewis defeats Chris Dalkis, in devastating fashion via Yeah, right hooks,
Couldn't
right?
have been more wrong there.
Well, I couldn't have been more wrong either. I think did we both take Dalkis?
Yeah, I thought Dalkis would touch him a lot more, move around a lot more, but this was Derrick Lewis being aggressive, and man, he just found him. And when he lands, it's just hard to walk through that. Much like Francis Ngannou, those guys when they touch you, it's just there's not much defense for that.
Okay, so I wanted to run an idea by you because I'm hearing a lot of questions. What's next for Derrick Lewis? Because frankly, he's in a little bit of a strange position, right? He was badly beaten in the interim title fight against Gon, but now he's got this amazing win against Dalkis. And am I crazy for thinking maybe consider Lewis versus John Jones for the interim belt?
See, I think Derrick Lewis is 0 for 2 on the belts right now. Hear me out here. How about Derrick Lewis versus Tai Tuivasa?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I'm a big Thai fan. I don't like that for Thai.
I don't either, but you look at who Derrick Lewis just said yes to, Chris Dalkis, who's an up-and-coming heavyweight who hasn't been ranked that long, is ranked behind him, yada, yada. So Derrick Lewis I don't think he's necessarily trying to get a title shot right away. I think he's just going to try and eat on a few of these up-and-comers, and I think Ty versus him makes an interesting fight, but obviously I would favor Lewis, but would be a lot of fun.
I agree. I actually love that fight. Okay, so now I just have to ask. If, for whatever reason, they made Lewis Jones, I get it. I get it, everyone. That's not going to happen. If they make Lewis Jones for an interim belt, who would you have winning?
I mean, that's such a hard question. We haven't seen Jones in forever.
Isn't it a great matchup?
It's great. Well, I mean, if you consider what Gon did to Derrick Lewis, you'd have to favor John Jones stylistically and body-wise. I mean, he's quicker, he's longer, he's a thinking man's fighter, much like Gon is. So that gave Derrick Lewis tremendous problems.
Does Jones have the power to stop a heavyweight like Derrick Lewis?
Well, I don't think Gon hit him that hard. I think he just hit him a lot.
Yeah. True. I personally think Lewis Jones, first, there's something about it I love. It's hard to put into words.
You love the vision of Derrick Lewis splatting him unconscious in the first round. We all know what you love about it.
I mean, that's true, but look, honest to God, if someone asked me who would I favor, I would favor Jones. Oh, absolutely. I'd favor Jones. For sure.
But the question marks with John Jones at this point, post running with the law, post changing gym, post changing weight class. Yep. I mean, post going nuclear on social media all the time. Like it's just a strange time to be like confident in anything with John Jones, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Okay.
Quick question. I wanted to jump to the Lamos Angela Hill fight. A lot of people are saying that was controversial. Did you have any thoughts on this? Because I had Lamos winning.
I had Lamos winning. I think it's ridiculous that it was a split decision, although I understand. I mean, I scored a 29-28. I thought Angela won. Didn't Angela win the first round, unless I'm misremembering?
I thought Angela Hill got knocked down in the first round.
Okay, so the truth is, I might be misremembering here, but I know Angela won a round. I know Angela won a round on my card, 100%.
Okay. No, I could see her winning a round for sure. But yeah, I had Lamos winning that. But that might be a fight they want to run back because it was really close.
Oh, Angela's now 13-11, and Lamos is 11-1. I don't know. I think Angela's very close to getting cut, to be honest.
See, she's so much of a personality. I don't think so. And she has a case with all these split decision losses that, she's been in a lot of those fights. She could easily be, 17-7 right now, honestly.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so are we ready to move on from this card?
No, let's keep talking. There's some good ones. Ricky Simone, any thoughts?
Yeah. Okay, we've got a lot to cover tonight, Fikey. Yeah, of course. Ricky Simone gets the TKO via right hook and uppercuts against Rafael Assunção at 2 minutes and 14 seconds of round number 2. This was very impressive from Ricky.
Yeah, another guy. This was his best form. Kind of on the outside looking in when you think about all the top prospects and top contenders, but I'm interested to see where he goes next because I definitely think he's one of those ascending guys. He's got the physicality, the wrestling, his striking's coming along. He's super tough, so I'm a Ricky Simone fan.
As am I. Okay, so now that we covered that fight, we have to cover Matthias Gamrat getting the TKO via submission to strikes. It says submission to strikes against Diego Ferreira at 326 around number 2. Gamrat has climbed to 20-1 at 155. That's
Big
quite
win.
the record. Big win. What do you think of Gamrat and his performance and his potential ceiling?
I mean, I like him a lot. I see him as kind of, he's probably got a ceiling somewhat like Rafael Fiziev.
It's interesting you say that because Fiziev is ranked the 11 contender and Gamrat just made his debut at number 12 contender.
Nice. Because I see probably both have that top 5 potential. Funny you say that because I actually think Gamrat should fight Brad Riddell next. I think that'd be a fun fight.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. I like that one. Does Gregor Gillespie have a fight? What's going on with him?
I don't think he does.
Okay, I would also like that, but yeah, I do not dislike that Riddell pick. That'd be a great fight.
I think that'd be a great bounce back fight for Riddell, and it's a big kind of step up for Gamrat in the UFC.
Okay. Last thing, at least.
Gotta touch on Cub Swanson.
Thank you. That's what I was going to say. I was going to say Cub Swanson via KO. They say there's a lot of KO TKOs. I don't know if they're changing the rules here. Via punches and a wheel kick at 2 minutes and 12 seconds of round number 1 against Darren the Damage Elkins. What a win for Cub Swanson.
Yeah, man, when Cub's on, he's a real smooth operator. I think Darren Elkins was, the perfect opponent for him right here. Just a lot smoother on the feet, quicker to the punch, and just put it on Darren Elkins, something fierce. And, yeah, impressive stuff for Cub. Not sure where we can go with him next. You got any thoughts?
That's what I was just thinking. I'm looking. What about number 15, Alex Caceres?
Oh, perfect.
Yep.
Love that.
Great.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, that's what I think. Okay, so are we ready to move on or anything else?
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay, all right. So we are now moving on to what is viewed as the most, the most prestigious award show in MMA. We don't like to brag about it, but, a lot of people are always asking us, including professional fighters, Dana, etc., who's going to win the 2021 Splitties? Those are, of course, our combat awards. So we're now going to jump into the 2021 Splitties. And
let's do it.
We're going to start off with Fight of the Year. Fight Geek, why don't you start us off? Do you have a pick for Fight of the Year?
I do, and there was a lot of great ones, but I went with UFC 267, Justin Gaichi versus Michael Chandler. This fight was just like super visceral, just straightforward, back and forth. It did tail off a bit at the end of the fight, but I think that's just from just pure exhaustion of giving it their all through the first, 13 minutes of that fight. Couldn't love that more. Would show that fight to anybody, introducing them to the sport. Just a great fight.
I'm annoyed that I chose the same fight. I also had Gaichi.
Wow.
But I had a runner-up. Yeah, in several of these categories, I had to list multiple fights. I just had to. So I listed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Volkanovski Ortega was my runner-up, and then and this might be even more controversial. I really loved Jan versus Sandhagen.
I love Jan versus Sandhagen, but I actually love Dillashaw versus Sandhagen as well.
And
that
that's
was a
fair.
Back and forth war.
Yep, that's very fair as well.
So that was my runner-up.
Yeah, Corey Sandhagen was in 2 great fights, 2 amazing fights.
Absolute action fights, and he lost by a hair both times.
Yep, very unfortunate.
Or actually, he lost by a little more than the hair to Jan, but very competitive guy. So, yeah, it was a great year for fights. There was a ton of good ones, but I think Gaichi Chandler stands out just for so many reasons.
Absolutely. Okay, so now coming up next, we've got our KO of the year. I will start off so that we'll just split off. So we'll do different. Okay, KO of the year for me. I'm not just going, guys, by how flashy it was. I'm also considering how big of a moment it was, what the stakes were. So that's still a factor for me. And I am going with Rose Namajunas knocking out Weili Zhang in the first round at UFC 261.
Excellent choice. Iconic knockout. I think that'll be one that people will remember for a long time. And that leads me to my choice, which is another one I think people will remember for a very long time, and that is UFC 262. I think it's the same fight card, Masvidal, Usman 2. And Usman knocking out Masvidal.
Yeah, 261, but yes, you're absolutely right.
261, sorry. Yeah, just the impact on that punch, the fact that he was knocking out a guy who's notorious for not being knocked out, the stakes, the rematch.
Masvidal literally spun in a circle while unconscious.
Yeah,
I've never seen that.
The impact of him hitting him and the neck buckling and the sweat flying off and just truly an impactful moment. I'll remember that knockout for a very long time.
Totally agree. That was my runner-up for the record. And then I even had one more that I had to list, which was Sandhagen. Here he is again coming up, his knockout against Frankie Edgar.
Yes, that was on my one of the tops on my list too. Obviously, just perfectly placed. So yeah, that was insane.
Okay, all right. So moving on to submission of the year. This is an interesting one. I have a feeling we won't have the same one. I think this one's a little bit more open. So let's start off with you. You go first. What you got?
And you probably have to correct me on the card again, but I went UFC 263, Brandon Moreno versus Figueiredo 2, because of the stakes, because of the opponent, a rematch. I was there live, so I felt how dramatic it was when he took his back and when he tapped him out and when the place went absolutely wild and you saw the emotion on his face. And it was an iconic moment again. Love Brandon Moreno, and I love that submission because of it cemented him as a figure in history.
Absolutely. It was UFC 263, Adesanya Vettori 2, but yes, absolutely, in Glendale, Arizona. And yep, that was definitely a submission that I had on my short list. Mine is definitely a little bit more controversial. I went with Vicente Luque's submission of Michael Chiesa. And the reason I went with that is I just thought that the circumstances leading up to it were part of what made it so great, right? Chiesa almost has Luque in a submission, and Vicente is able to not only defend it, a very tight sub, but he's able to completely reverse it and then get the best of Chiesa mere moments later for the sub. So I just thought that was crazy.
Yeah, that was amazing. And I got another one. My runner-up was actually Andre Muniz submitting Giacare Souza.
Oh, that was a great one.
Just because of how legendary Giacare is, and to submit him and retire him in the black belt jiu-jitsu community, I'm sure basically makes Muniz a legend.
Yeah, and then just in terms of the historical impact and the shock of it, got to give a quick shout out to Juliana Pena's submission of Amanda Nunes.
Absolutely, yeah. Good call out. I mean, not the most technical submission, but
not at all. Actually, one of the least technical. But
yeah,
okay.
But yeah, the impact is insane. So that brings us to our fighter of the year. You got to pick here.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be honest. I'll be very shocked if we have different answers. I think there was no debate. It was Kamaru the Nigerian Nightmare Usman with 3 title defenses.
Unanimously, of course. I think that 3 title defenses. 2 of them were stoppages. Yep. Became the number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. Yeah, this was Kamaru Usman's year. Hard to pick anybody else.
Absolutely. Okay, and then finally, at least this is final on my original list, Coach of the Year. Start us off.
Yeah, I think this is a no-brainer. Trevor Whitman had an enormous year with Kamaru Usman, Rose, and Justin Gaichi. Yeah. Likeable totally guy, unbelievable technique, and his pupils are laser sharp.
Completely agree. I don't even see how it could be up for debate, frankly, with anyone else. It's Whitman by a mile. So
absolutely. So unanimously there.
Absolutely. Okay. So are we ready to move on to? Do we have any more sections? Or are we ready to move on to the quick break and then we'll come back with listener questions?
That'll do it. Yeah, let's go.
Perfect. Okay, guys, we'll be right back after this with listener questions and more. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude letting you know that this episode of the Split Decision Podcast is brought to you by TotalAggressionClothing.com. Visit www.TotalAggressionClothing.com and use the promo code 46210 to receive a special Split Podcast discount on all Total Aggression hats, shirts, hoodies, and more. Again, that's www.TotalAggressionClothing.com with promo code 46210. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 121, here with my always brilliant and beautiful co-host, the Fight Geek, and it is now time for my ultimate favorite section of all, and that is... Listen up! All right. Let's do it. So, Fight Geek, do you want to start us off real quick as I log into the Split account
Sure.
Okay, great.
I got one here from the MMA Philosopher.
MMA Philosopher, what up?
He says, most shocking thing to happen in 2022 MMA will be, ? You can pick a fight, outcome, or some sort of storyline or departure from the UFC.
Oh, great.
I think this is an interesting question, hypothetical. I think the most crazy storyline of 2022 will be that the UFC lets Jon Jones go.
Wow, I love it.
Yeah.
This is such a good question. This is such a tough question.
You could really go in a lot of ways here.
Okay. Shoot, I wish I'd looked at this earlier. Okay, so I'm going to have to go with Jake Paul fights a UFC fighter, a current one. Don't get mad, guys. Don't get mad at me. Don't get mad. I'm saying at the end of 2022, by the way.
Are you saying this is cross-promoted with the UFC?
Yes, I am. I think Dana's going to feel, I think if Jake keeps winning, Dana's going to feel he has to get rid of him.
Well, that means he'd have to win at least one or two more fights because I think he fought 4 times this year. So you're saying his last fight of 2022?
Yeah, I'm saying I think it's going to be a year from now, December 2022.
Interesting. All right, good question.
Yeah, love that question, Smart Dan. And guys, give at SmartDan51, aka the MMA Philosopher, a follow. He's a great dude. Okay, so now next question. This is from our man Aaron at the Friendly Sparring Podcast. Guys, give that a listen. It's a great show as well. At Friendly Spar Pod. He says, does Derrick Lewis listen to your show? #AskSplitPod. I think just about every major fighter listens to our show. I mean, we're kind of one of the big shows.
Isn't that a given?
Come on, man. I mean, what are you talking about? Look, Gilbert Burns loves us. We've had him on twice, so everyone listens. No, honestly, I don't think Derrick listens.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but he should.
Gilbert listens when you're not bashing him, of course, but that's okay.
I'm not bashing. I'm just giving an honest take.
Yeah. Okay. So, love that fun question from Juice here. So, okay, this is from at Zoe Yours Truly. Love Zoe. What's up, Zoe? He says, just want to say happy holidays to both you guys. Stay safe out there. Thank you so much, Zoe. We really, really appreciate it.
Happy holidays, man. Merry Christmas.
Holidays. Stay safe, guys, and thank you. Okay, this next question comes from our man, MMA by Milliken. I love Milliken, guys. Give him a follow ASAP. That's at MMA by Milliken, Millikin. I love Milliken. And he's always being so nice. And I see, Milliken, I see all of your nice comments on YouTube. I thank you. I see them all, and they really mean a lot. So he's bringing some great questions. First, favorite walkout song from 2021. Second, favorite new prospect. Third, who should get cut from the UFC's roster next year? And 4, is Phil's girl, Lucky Lauren Murphy, a gatekeeper or just plain taking up space? #AskSplitPod. Love it. Okay, so...
Brutal.
Okay,
right.
So first of all, favorite walkout from 2021. I've got a weird answer, and I'm just going to be the first. This might piss people off. I don't care. YMCA, when Jake Paul walked out to Woodley this last week, it was funny.
Was it?
I
I
thought
guess so. I guess it was lighthearted, so.
it wouldn't have been cool if he had lost, but because he got a huge knockout, it made it cool, in my opinion.
True.
Okay. What was your favorite?
Walkout songs, huh? I mean, I'm drawing a blank there. I don't know how so. Walkout songs.
Would it be wait. Wasn't did Surreal when Surreal Gone walked out against Derrick Lewis, he trolled Derrick Lewis with the Derrick Lewis song. Remember that? That was good.
That was good. I mean, I was there, at UFC 261 in Glendale when Nate Diaz did his walkout. That was pretty epic. I mean, Nate Diaz is a cultural icon. So, when the lights went out and his music came on, it's always West Coast. It's Tupac. So that was a pretty live situation with Nate walking out. It was like the squad was coming into the building.
Absolutely. Okay, so favorite new prospect. Do you want to go first here?
Yeah, I feel strong about these two. Big fan of Ilia Topuria, 11-0.
Good choice.
One of the really good ones. And I'm also a really big fan of Casey O'Neill, 8-0.
Yes.
New female fighter. I think she's 2-0 in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken. So those are my two top prospects in the UFC. Okay,
so the first prospect that I definitely wanted to mention was Talia Santos. Santos. I think she's extremely impressive at flyweight. I think she can potentially do some big things. And second, Tom Aspinall at heavyweight. I think that he is a slightly better version of Chris Dalkis.
That's a fair.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking as of right now. So okay.
Perfect.
Yeah. So next question from our man Milliken. Why did it just?
Who should get cut from the UFC's roster next year? Well, I can say Sam Alvey right off the top.
Oh, my God. Sam Alvey and Cowboy. Let's start with those two.
Well, Cowboy is rumored to be fighting Paddy Pimblett in London, and I love that fight.
Oh, I kind of love that fight. Ooh, is that
it?
You
have to love that fight. It's the perfect gatekeeper fight for Paddy, and because there's a chance Cowboy can beat Paddy, but there's also a chance that Paddy puts it on him and retires him.
Ooh, that is fun. Okay, yeah. So Sam Alvey
in London. Sam Alvey. Let's think of other guys on.
So you have no guilt. You have no guilt throwing your buddy Sam Alvey under the bus when we were in a fantasy pick'em league with him for months and months and months. You're just throwing your buddy under the bus.
I like Sam Alvey, but the proof is in the pudding. And it would have been Jean Vellante had he not been let go recently. I mean,
yeah,
the guys that are hangers-ons who are not doing anything in the top 25 of the division and are on 4 or 5 fight losing streaks. And are aging, I'm not trying to be rude, but, there's a lot of young, hungry, competitive fighters out there.
Has Mickey Gall been cut yet? He's got to get out of here.
Well, Mickey Gall is still young enough to have considerable upside.
Yeah, does he? Is he still young enough to have considerable upside?
Well, I think he's like 29. So, yeah, a lot of UFC champions, I think, don't become champion until they're almost 31 on average. So.
I understand. And you think that Mickey Gall might become champion?
No, but I'm saying statistically there's still a time.
Okay, yeah, I hear what you're saying. Okay, that's fair. Okay, so final question is Phil's girl. I think he's being sarcastic. I don't hate Lauren Murphy, though. It's not like I hate her, but is Phil's girl, Lucky Lauren Murphy, a gatekeeper or just plain taking up space? Let me be honest. It's true that I didn't used to like Lauren Murphy. I think that's where this joke comes from, because in Tough, she blamed Eddie Alvarez for losing and cried about it all season. And I thought that was really funny.
Agreed. That wasn't her best moment.
No, it was not. She cried about it all season. And anyway, having said all that, people move on. A big deal. I'm not going to judge her for life for that. And she fought way tougher than I thought she would against Valentina. I had no idea she'd make it to the 4th round. I thought that was, frankly, a victory in and of itself. And I think Lauren Murphy is a good gatekeeper. No, I don't think she's taking up space.
Agreed. And if you really watched the sport and you saw her little winning streak that got her a title shot, she had a stoppage in that run. She's a physically fit fighter who's very dedicated. So, I mean, yeah, she's the perfect kind of fighter to occupy the back end of the top 15 in that division. Perfect.
Yep. Okay, moving on to A split podcast. OG Eduardo at Landa Crew, one of our most loyal listeners, always bringing amazing questions, and this one is no exception. In fact, this might be one of our best questions of the year, Fight Geek. I love it. He says, what's the most important MMA storyline of 2021?
Ooh. Important. When you say important, does that mean historically or?
I think it's up for interpretation.
Because, I mean, to me, the most important storyline...
Fall of McGregor. The fall of Conor McGregor.
I think it's Amanda Nunes losing in her GOAT status all of a sudden being debatable because 3 weeks ago that was ironclad.
You think that's debate? I don't think that's debatable at all. I think Nunes has done too much.
I agree she's still the GOAT, but again, with public perception and all the kind of casual viewing fans...
So what, we're going to say Juliana Peña's the GOAT now? What?
No, but now the Cyborg argument's back open.
Cyborg didn't even last half of one round with Nunes. Not half of
we've
one
already
round.
Discussed that. That's because she was willing to just go in there and...
I mean, I understand,
shots.
But it doesn't matter why. I'm just talking about what happened.
I think Valentina has to come back and beat Juliana, or else her legacy is certainly altered.
You mean Amanda? You said Valentina.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean. She needs to come back and beat Juliana in a rematch, and then potentially a trilogy to solidify that, because anytime you have a blemish on your resume in this game, we will find ways to argue against you with it.
Yeah, okay, very fair. Yeah, so I think the biggest storyline of 2021 was the very big fall of the notorious Conor McGregor. He had two fights with Poirier.
Not to interrupt you, but
yep, go ahead.
Did he fall because they're talking about Charles Oliveira fighting him next?
I don't think there's any chance that happens. None.
Well, Charles Oliveira is kind of calling for it.
I understand. I mean, I don't think Charles Oliveira has a lot of sway. Look, he's a great fighter, but he ain't exactly Mr. Charisma or Mr. Popular. He's an amazing
Sorry to interrupt,
fighter.
Though. Go ahead with your Conor point.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, leading into 2021, Conor's coming off, obviously, this win against Cowboy in 2020, dominating first-round win. He's got a rematch with Dustin Poirier. I remember we both picked McGregor to beat Dustin in that second fight at UFC 257. Instead, Conor gets knocked out, slept for the first time in his entire career inside 2 rounds. They run it back and do a rematch. Conor looks 10 times worse than he did in the second fight, gets annihilated within 1 round, and then Dustin loses to Charles rather easily. So it really kind of shows you just how far Conor's fallen.
When you paint it like that, it's tough to argue, but, there's still 40% of the community that, thinks Conor's loss in the third fight is inconclusive.
I mean, there's a lot of people that believe a lot
As
of
if
things.
Snapping your leg when kicking someone in a fight is inconclusive.
Right. I love how...
That seems like the most conclusive thing that could have happened.
Guys, it doesn't even count. Dustin snapped his leg in half. Oh, really? I thought that would... I thought that would count like big time.
Exactly.
But, yeah. And then moving on to another split podcast. OG, amazing guy, Zan Bando. That's at Zan Bando 99, an amazing journalist. Guys, give him a follow. Love this guy. He says, "Hey fellas, welcome back. Would you be able to answer my questions about Kayla Harrison and Dustin Poirier from last week and touch on the following?" Ooh.
I got it queued up right now.
Oh, good for you. Okay, good. I do not. Do you want to start with those then?
Sure. He says, what's next for Dustin Poirier? Still one of the biggest names in the sport, but I feel like he needs the right opponent. Who is it and why? Second question, now that Amanda Nunes lost her title, will Kayla Harrison go to the UFC? I've been, since right after the fight, I've been saying Dustin Poirier is going to look for an opponent that interests him and not necessarily jump back in line. I said that was Nate Diaz. Him and Nate Diaz have been talking back and forth the last week. Nate Diaz is the fight for Dustin Poirier. I know it doesn't make sense.
No, I agree.
But that's the fight. That's a headliner. Both these guys have been circling each other for more than a decade, more or less. So, yeah, they probably want to get their hands on each other. Let's do it.
Yeah, hard to disagree there. I generally think that's the fight.
And not to drag on, but I actually think that fight could be a 170 also, which would introduce, Dustin to the 170-pound division.
Oh, I thought it went without saying it's at 170. Listen, I really, really don't think Nate Diaz is ever going back to 55, and I don't think he can. And
I don't think he wants to,
right.
That's for sure.
I would be shocked. Let me put it, I would be absolutely shocked if Nate Diaz fights at 155 again.
Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, and then now that Amanda lost, will Kayla go on to sign with the UFC?
No.
I actually don't think so. I think this makes it more likely that she would go to a Bellator on a 3-fight deal or something like that.
I think she's going to Bellator. I think that's exactly what it is.
There's more credible names to fight there now. Now that Felicia Spencer unexpectedly retired, that was going to be a perfect opponent for her to maybe even debut against. So there's really no one for her to fight at 145. And I think the Bellator affords her at least 3 opportunities, to be on a different network, to be on a different platform. And then, maybe she might have to get to 135 to ever get to the UFC. Honestly, not sure if that's even possible.
Kayla can't make 35. She has trouble she can barely make 45, is my understanding at least.
Right.
So,
but then again, Muniz is still the 145-pound champ, so there's still an opportunity for the UFC to dangle a title fight as soon as she comes over. But they are teammates, and I think they're cordial enough to try and avoid each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, you got to think the UFC is not going to be willing to pay Kayla as much money as perhaps if Amanda had beaten Juliana, right?
I don't know. She's still the 145-pound champ, but the thing is now Amanda's storyline has hit a fork in the road, and it's all Pena. Now she has to get that back.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, Nunez Pena too is a gigantic fight now. So totally agree.
Massive.
With that. Yeah. Okay, moving on to Zan's questions from this week. He says, 1, will Jorge Masvidal and Jake Paul actually fight each other? No, I don't think they will, Zan. And I realize that I predicted that Jake Paul would fight a UFC fighter by the end of 2022. I stand by that, but I don't think Dana's going to give him a 170er. I think he's going to give him a 185er or maybe even a light heavyweight.
Yeah,
I think he'd be too concerned about, right? I mean, if you're Dana...
I think he will fight Masvidal, but I think it'll be in 2 years after Masvidal's done with the UFC, and it'll be, he'll be, 38 years old, and Jake Paul will be 7-0, and yada, yada.
Okay, fair enough. All right, okay.
I just don't think it'll be next year.
Okay, so second question, will UFC 270 remain in California? Yes, I absolutely think it will. To be honest with you, I wasn't even aware that it was being considered to be moved.
I wasn't either.
I don't know anything about that, actually. One of the benefits, people might think that I'm creeping on Twitter all the time with some secret account. The truth is I'm not at all. So that's good and bad, but I have not heard of UFC 270 being moved. That's for dang sure.
News to me.
Yep, I think it's staying right where it is at the Honda Center. So, okay, moving on. Okay, next question. Love this guy, close friend of mine. This is Cyrus King, at Cyrus King. He's got a great show, Combat Corner. Guys, be sure to check that out. Love this guy. He says, if Francis Ngannou leaves the UFC, where would you like to see him go? #AskSplitDecision. And this is relevant because for those who don't know, Ngannou only has 1 fight left on his contract and declined to re-up, to re-sign for more. So if he loses to Gane at 270, he's a free agent.
Yeah.
And I think he goes straight to boxing. I think he would go straight to boxing.
I think he goes to boxing as well, but I just don't think that's going to work out as well as MMA, especially considering his well-documented kind of cardio questions. Boxing is much more of a long play, especially, in the heavyweight division. You don't see a lot of guys get people out of there in 20 seconds. It's usually at least a couple rounds to get warmed up and kind of feel each other out. I think boxing would be a tough play for Francis, big time. But I could definitely see him using his name and getting, a payday in boxing that's more than his whole MMA career combined to this point.
Absolutely. So now let me ask you this, because this is the last part of this question where it gets a little weird. So do you think are there any concerns that Francis may try in any way, shape, or form to maybe not give his full-on effort for this fight in the hopes of getting cut to try and make more money with boxing, or is that too far-fetched?
No, I think Francis is still in the money-making stage of his career and wants to put forth the best performance possible. I think he understands that. I think his management team knows that he has to keep winning and being the scariest man on the planet in order to maximize his potential.
Yep, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, do we have another listener question? I keep clicking out of it. Don't ask me.
Yes, we do. I'll pull that
thought we
right
did.
up.
Sorry for clicking. Oh, it's from our good friend Jalen Ware. Love Jalen, guys. Give him a follow. He's always brings the fire. I know I say that about everyone, but come on, you guys heard all the questions here. Was there a single bad question? Not even close. And this guy is at strive2be_GR8. Strive to be great. Love Jalen. He says, is beating Giacare in the featherweight division equivalent to beating Khamzat Chimaev at 170? How would a win for Calvin Kattar erase that schoolyard beating Max put on him? #AskSplitPod. Well, Jalen, I think it would do a lot to put Calvin back into the good graces of everyone and have them forget about that beating.
Yeah, but let's be honest here. No one is ever forgetting about that Max Holloway fight. That was a legendary performance by Max, who made an example of Kattar or Kattar. And so no matter what he does, that is going to be its own place in history. But I do think it will go a long way to proving that he's still a viable top 5 guy. Don't love this matchup for him at all, considering, he just came off taking, I think he took 300 strikes in that fight or something insane.
But he did take a full year off, luckily.
He did, but now he's coming back to a vicious striker, which, you're not going to avoid giga kicks. You're going to have to absorb some of them. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. And for the record, I know it's a little early for this, but my early thoughts are that Giga Chikadze is going to be a little too much for Calvin.
Absolutely. So it's kind of a great comparison to Chimaev. I kind of think they are both the equivalent of the division's boogeyman who nobody wants to fight right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Totally agree. Okay, so are we missing any other questions, or does that wrap us up?
That does it.
All right. So, guys, Fight Geek Jr. is doing a couple of days. So let's give a quick shout out to Fight Geek on that one. Best of luck becoming a new dad. Good luck sleeping.
Yeah, right.
But,
thanks, man.
Yeah, of course. And with that, Fight Geek, take us away, baby.
All right, guys. As usual, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, and more. I'm at the Fight Geek MMA. He's at Phil the MMA Dude. We're at Split_Podcast. It's 4 words, the Split Decision Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and have a very Merry Christmas. Peace.
Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Peace.